If the tech people would just sit right next to the business people day in and day out, you'll build a product pretty fast, but it's that disconnect is where it slows it down. The idea was if we could train 4 super users in different pillars of our company to be masters of the entry-level work, we'll never have to train entry-level ever again. I think what we found and what I've seen over my 20 years is that those 2 different roles have 2 different types of people. There is the small percentage of people that are really good at both. But for the most part, you're either super organized and structured and you can execute as a BDR, or you're kind of all over the place and you're just a people person.
Welcome to the Freight Show podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Jordan Reber, president of ARL Logistics, who shares his journey from dispatch trainee to leading a fast-growing, agent-powered logistics network. Jordan dives into how ARL scaled by blending offshore talent, automation, and a reimagined cradle-to-grave model, while keeping relationships at the core. We cover how he built hybrid teams in Colombia, why continuous training and small wins matter, and how ARL is now evolving its sales structure with a nod to the revenue engine framework. Jordan also shares lessons on vetting tech vendors, unlocking value from messy data, and balancing people with process. This episode is brought to you by Vooma, the back-office automation platform built for freight brokerages. From AI document handling to ops streamlining, Vooma helps you scale without the growing pains. Learn more at vooma.com.
Awesome, Jordan. Super excited to have you on the first episode of the Freight Show today. It's funny, Jordan, I think back to the beginnings of Vooma, and you actually played a role even as the early versions of the idea were sort of coming to life. I think it was maybe Rich Casoli that introduced me to you. And he said that Jordan loves to try and chat about new technology. And so it's been fun getting to know you over the past few years. But for I actually don't think I've ever fully kind of heard your story and how you got into freight and and how you got into your current role at ARL, and would love to hear the story from the beginning.
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me on the show. And just so you know, when Rich does that to you, it just means he doesn't have the patience to deal with what you want to talk about. So
I know. Hey, we're still working. Me and Rich are still yet to work together in a formal capacity. So I hear that.
Well, it's interesting. So Rich Casoli does go back to my origin. When I first got into the business, it was a management training program at PGT Trucking in Monaca, Pennsylvania. Just like anyone else coming out of school, I got a business management degree, had no idea what I wanted to do. They just told me, hey, you got to get a degree to get an interview. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that as fast as possible. But PGT had a cool program that you got to spend 2 weeks in every department. And when you were done with that, you picked what your top 3 were, and then they placed you. And what I learned really fast was there was a lot of back office jobs that I could never do. I just remember sitting at my desk, falling asleep and watching the time go by because just very administrative. And I came from the restaurant world. So for me, everything needed to be really fast paced, high stress, people losing their tempers a little bit. You lose track of time. That's how I like to work. And so once I got into dispatch and I felt that environment, I was like, okay, yeah, this is where we need to be at. And Rich had gone through that program 4 years before me. So he was already there. He was in a management role. You can kind of see him and some others of what the opportunities were. But I was actually presented with a unique opportunity then. PGT also owned Pittsburgh Logistics in Rochester, Pennsylvania. And they were doing fully outsourced contract solutions for large steel companies. They had about 16 customers at the time, and they needed to diversify. So they offered my boss, who was running the terminal, and myself an opportunity to go start a freight brokerage in which we were just going to, call on all the customers that didn't want to be fully outsourced and see if we could get any of their freight. And they actually had a proprietary TMS system. It was called eflatbed.com. It was really ahead of its time. It had waterfall tendering, dock scheduling, but it wasn't really built for transactional brokerage. So you could put things out to the waterfall tendering and then it would go to open market. And I was like, I just needed to go to open market right now. And so things were very manual. So at the early stages, we did have some technology proprietary that we could work with, but it just really wasn't built for transactional freight brokerage. And I didn't really know how to be a transactional freight broker. So as we were learning all that, we did build up the flatbed niche. It then was Pittsburgh Logistics was sold, became PLS Logistics, and we started to expand in other modes, other markets. I got to move to Jacksonville, Florida in 2011, and start a satellite branch, which was the blueprint for how we'd open up multiple offices. And we started to scale with that cradle to grave brokerage model. Um, so 10 years was great, met a lot of great people. But it was just time to move on to do something else. And that's when I met Ron Faraday, owner of ARL, John Kellenberger and David Anderson, owners of US One Industries, which is our parent company, and told them, hey, I wanted to do, learn their side of the business because they do drayage, which I knew enough about drayage, but I didn't know about the asset side of it. So let me learn about that for a little while. And then eventually we were going to, start a brokerage. And we did that in 2016. I was able to bring on some guys that used to work with us at PLS that, have been gone off, done some different things, and we're, ready to get back in and do it a different way. Ironically, at the same time, I met Robert Cadena and David Bell and Jeff Mazer from Lean Solutions Group, Lean Staffing back then. And it was interesting. I was like, I like the way that the reps interact with the customers in a cradle to grave model. I don't like all the BS that those reps have to do that slows them down from doing what they should be doing, just building relationships and working strategically with their customers. So I said, all right, well, being in Colombia, setting up back office operations for our drayage entity, which was super manual processes, because back then we were still on paper logs. If you imagine, we're doing that. Plus with drayage, there's a lot of paperwork. So, I'm down there creating all these SOPs for the team down there. And I was meeting some of the others around. I was like, wow, these guys are college educated, bilingual, they're super talented. It's like, I could teach them to move freight. It's like, and I could do that at scale too. I know that already. What was challenging was getting your sales reps to be successful. It was like, well, if I can get all this operations work off their plate, that should increase their chance of being more successful and decrease some of the stress that's going on within that cradle to grave model. So we got to created this hybrid, staffing assisted cradle to grave model, I guess is the best way to do it. And then as we were building, it always was, okay, first we put this mundane process in Colombia, then we think of ways to automate it. Or we're working with tech providers that could, plug into our systems that could automate parts of this. And like, the goal was never to automate everything from start to finish. It was like, if it was a 10-step process, can we automate 7 of them? Can we automate 6? Can we automate 1, 2, 3, and then 6, 7, and then the humans will fill in between. And I think that's when we first met, it was interesting to me because all our load building was being done in Colombia. And if we couldn't get it set up via EDI, you were kind of like, hey, this is what it is. You got to build it. And in every TMS, you can duplicate old orders, change things. You can create templates, but it still left a lot of human error to be able to go in and say, oh, I forgot to change the weight on that one. I forgot to change the pickup appointment on that one, which causes real problems. So automating the load building was where you came into play with that. And it's just been kind of always thinking like that ever since. Just trying to tweak the model little by little, seeing where the industry's going. Since then, I have expanded to both sides of our company. We're operating 950 drivers across the country, still heavily focused on intermodal drayage. But that brings a whole slew of other issues running a trucking company. So we're kind of balancing both. But what we've noticed is that there's a lot of synergies that we can start to find between the groups. And ultimately, our salespeople shouldn't just be selling brokerage. Like, they need to sell the whole network, because there's a lot of different opportunities, especially for entrepreneurs. We're an agent-based network. We're always partner with different people that want to better themselves and kind of grow and just need that financial backing. They need the risk protection on the insurance side of things, and we can really make these strategic partnerships to help them grow, do national account sales across the country, and then, putting them in the right bucket within ARL where it makes the most sense, and you don't have to always crowbar them in like we did on the brokerage side. So it's created a lot of interesting opportunities for me, challenging myself to grow. And it's been exciting.
Yeah, very cool. There's a bunch there to unpack. I'm curious, so you started your career on the dispatching side. How long were you in that role at the beginning?
I think technically I got pulled out of the 6-month training program early.
Okay.
And then I probably did it for like 6 to 8 months. And then the opportunity got to start a transactional brokerage.
What's been the impact for you? Because not every broker, right, has had that sort of experience actually working on the carrier side. How did that shape your perspective or inform the way that you attacked the
Um,
logistics side
I,
of things?
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of dynamic people. I got assigned to the independent contractors early on, which was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess gets deal with these guys, and didn't realize like what that actually meant. As you're dealing with these guys, that there's no forced dispatch, so you had to convince them to take the loads,
Very
or
interesting.
they're calling in every day asking about the one perfect load that they get once a month, and it's like they're always shocked when it's not there, and
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
dude, we got to do these other loads for the customers too. So you learn to kind of just negotiate with people and try to help,
How what did
figure out
you
how
like?
people.
How did you learn to do that role well?
I would just do a lot of coaching to my mentors, to be honest. But it was ultimately at some point you got to tell them, like, guys, it's either take this freight or not. Like, we have to service the account, or we're gonna have no freight
Right.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, but it was just part of it, and I think the drivers knew that too. They also knew I was the 22-year-old fresh out of college. Like, we could probably push this guy a little bit.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, you mentioned being very like early with lean staffings and seeing the opportunity for like using outsource. Like, how did you? So it sounds like you were like at a spot where it was pretty clear to you that there was an opportunity in the back office. But how did it become clear to you that you thought that you could extend that to like more of the other operational roles in
I think it's just
brokerage?
from being down there,
Yeah.
and so I wanted a hands-on approach. Even to some of the stuff we were setting up was pretty easy, but I just need to feel them out because we have a lot of similarities in our cultures, but there's also differences. So
Mm,
just trying to figure out who were our people that, could pick it up really fast and I could give them more, and
mm,
who were the ones I need to slow down. Or at the same point, it is a staffing company. So it was like, I wasn't going to waste too much time. I was like, hey, I got 4 people here. These 2 are really good at these things. Find me 2 more like that and replace
mm,
these 2. And I could do that a lot faster if I was down there. And from being there, I just met some of the other people that were working on other accounts.
mm,
I met, they were still small with their management group, but I was really close with them, and just realized it was like, this is this is just like where we start. Like, we
mm,
can build on top of this. And it really took, I think, our second or third year down there. I remember I jokingly was sitting in a small brokerage office, and Keith Reer and Greg Morrow are 2 of my partners
mm.
now. I read over to Greg, who was, recently married. I think I had one of his children by then, or close to. And I was like, hey, Greg, I think we're going to need you to go live there for like 6 months if we're going to really get them good at this, and then we can scale it. And Keith, who was sitting there single in his 20s, was like, I'll go. I was like,
So
oh,
good.
really? I was just joking, but yeah, let's do it. So Keith ended up going down. He actually only needed him there 2 months, but the idea was, if we could train 4 super users in
Mm,
different pillars of our company to be masters of the entry level work,
mm.
we'll never have to train entry level ever again. And that was what was really burning out
Oh
our
yeah.
managers up in Pittsburgh and in Moon Township. It was just that churn of, like, you get an employee in, they're doing a pretty basic job. You can only pay them so much.
Right.
6 months in, they get a couple extra bucks an hour somewhere else and they leave.
Mm,
And that was all the work we put into Colombia. But I was like, man, that would be, even just right off the bat, if we never had to train entry level
mm.
again, like, that's the training that nobody wants to do.
And so why did going to Colombia help you to solve that? Was it that you would have somebody there that understood how to train folks and you were able to like essentially like kind of do a train the trainer model, or like how did that model solve that problem for you?
Well, yeah, the trainer for is definitely part of it, but ultimately these were jobs that people really wanted down there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it was in a nice office environment, and so this is not like, oh, I hate going to work, it's Monday. It's like, no, they're
Right.
very appreciative to have this job, so they took it seriously, and then that bred the trainer type roles, where anytime people would be with us for a little bit, we'd say, hey, I know you want other opportunities, you want advancement. Well, here's the deal. We're going to hire someone new. You're going to help interview them, and then you're going to train them. And until they are as good as you at that job, you will not move on. And if
Mm,
you do move on to another role and find out that they're not as good as you'll go back into that seat. So it really cemented it in them that, like, and it's fine if it takes 1 month, 2 months, whatever it is,
yeah.
train them to be as good as you are. So then we'll release you to the kind of the next role. And that's how we started to scale it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, feel like when we first chatted, there was some amount of skepticism, I think, initially that it was going to be possible to be able to train folks outside of the US. Like, was that like a concern for you guys? Did folks kind of see it differently at the time? And like, how did it kind of end up playing out? And like, what have you learned about where that model works very well versus like where it's really important to actually have folks in the US, and how is the like dust kind of settled there now?
Yeah, I think nowadays, obviously, people are very comfortable with training people remote and having remote employees. But prior to COVID, it was a different story. Could this be possible? I would just say, like, look, it's just the same as if we have an office in Florida. Like,
Right.
we're not just going to put them on an island. Like, we're going to go there, we're going to train them, we're going to work with them every single day. We're going to treat them like they're our own. When I would go down there, I would bring Pittsburgh Steelers swag with me and teach them about football and like get them all into the black and gold. We painted the walls red, white, and blue for ARL. So we made them really feel at home. I think that was definitely a big part of it. And then as was post COVID, everyone was kind of jumping on board on that. But I think the initial challenge was, okay, you're putting people into another country. So what, are these going to get rid of American jobs, which was
Mm.
the thing we're feeling. And then with our employees here, they had the same worries. Like, oh, are you replacing us? I was like, guys, we are not replacing anybody.
Yeah.
Like, this is for growth. And unfortunately, we don't have very big profit margins as a trucking company. So the only way to do this, all the things we have to do to stay compliant, we need to get it for cheaper labor. And this is where these guys are coming into play. But they're going to take this minutia off of your plate so you can help us with the growth. We know you can make the donuts every day. We don't
Mm.
need you to make the donuts anymore. Someone else is going to do that. And it freed those people up. Now, there were certainly some people that were here a long time that were not comfortable with that. Like, they
Mm.
wanted to come in and make the donuts every day. And so that was a little bit hard, but it's like, guys, it's not where we're going. And we'd rather just be honest with you, but no one's getting replaced. So we did lose a few people from that,
Mhm.
that went on to different opportunities. But at the end of the day, the people who were left here, like, really saw the value in
Mm.
what that team was bringing to us. Um, so then to address your question about like, what job should be there, what job should be up here. I mean,
Mm.
we've always kept most of our sales roles up here.
Mhm.
A lot of pricing and things like that sit up here. That
Mhm.
things that took a lot of industry experience of people all sitting in the room, working together on things. But really, everything else has always been down there. We have multiple levels of management down
Mm.
there as well. So as you look at our org chart, you really can't tell where the U.S. starts and Colombia begins, because it is kind of intertwined there in the middle. Um, but I would say just in general, like, there are a subset of the employees on there that don't really challenge status quo very well,
Mhm.
which is like, I want them to. Like, I want people
Mm.
at every level always speaking their mind, and say they tend to be people pleasers, and we
Mm.
are technically the customers, so they don't like to tell us bad news. I'm like,
Right.
guys, we've never treated you like a vendor or outsourcing.
Mm.
We've always treated you like employees. Like, you have as much a voice as the people in Pittsburgh do. You have to use it. And for some, they don't. I mean, they are in the back office. I mean, so you're not expecting them to be screaming from the mountaintops, but you would like to see across the board a little bit more of just pushing back.
Mm.
And that we've kind of like had a little bit of struggle to kind of get them to do that. But not everyone's company culture calls for that either. We
Yeah.
just like it.
And Jordan, you were saying that you guys, so you initially started the business with a like cradle to grave model. There's like some conversations now about sort of like thinking about sort of transitioning it. I'm curious to understand like what's been your experience. Like, why did you guys start there? What is good about that model? What are the like challenges that you guys have run into with that model, and where do you guys see yourself kind of moving to over time?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we started with the hybrid version of cradle to grave, so we were able to put a lot of the administrative work down in Colombia, track and trace, load building, even like inbound phone covering, like all the things that usually entry level people do in those first 6 months of working in a brokerage. And as I said, we like the customers having one point of contact, someone they could go to anytime, or a group email that's always the same people.
Yeah.
But what we saw the flaws in that, obviously we all grew through COVID, and then from going from 2022 to 2024, when things settled down, like, there's only one way to kind of right size things, and it's to start letting people go.
Mm.
And naturally, salespeople have numbers, so they get it, and we're very transparent with that. So it's not like we came in here and just whacked half the floor.
Mm.
It happened over time as people just weren't really hitting their numbers. But when you scale up, you need bodies. When you scale down, you have to decrease bodies.
Mm.
And yes, you're starting to automate things, but it's because everyone's doing everything, no one's really specialized in any parts of that. So as
Mm.
we look to make a transition, where we're going to have a smaller sales team filled with what we feel we do really, really well at the BDR level. So these business development reps that'll still be that contact for the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and other ones quoting and coordinating and organizing everything. But then backed by an operations team that'll be doing your carrier sales and the load building, your track and trace, and kind of put it in those three different buckets.
Okay.
And super important with our marketing strategy, which we did read Kara Brown's book, The Revenue Engine, and we took a lot of it to heart. I actually fed that over to Keith Reer, who's now running our brokerage. And I thought at first he would roll his eyes. It's just another idea from Jordan. But I was like, no, this speaks your language, man. Like, he's a very data analytical guy. He's a process driven guy. And so when he saw that, it was like, yeah,
What
this
were
is
the
no.
big learnings from that
Well, I
that
think so.
influenced you?
Marketing, supporting sales, and vice versa is a big deal. And in the
Mm.
cradle to grave world, guys that are moving freight, if some, marketing leads are coming in and we need sales to be jumping on them, and they couldn't do it because they had to, three
Mm.
loads dropped off, and now they got to
Right.
cover those, and the customer was calling, like, there's just all these reasons. And so you need, that sales team that's free and available so that we could put SLAs in place that says, hey,
Mm.
when it comes in, we expect these ones to be responded to within 15 minutes. Any sort of like inbound inquiry, like to research
Mm.
what did they respond to, there's different messages going out,
Mm.
and this is how we want you to approach it when you make those calls, and
Mm.
try to get some standardization and quality to their sales process.
Mm.
Because in cradle to grave, everyone's a renegade. They
Mm.
all know the best way to do it, and they're just going to do it their own way, but
Mm.
there's no consistency in how they're selling.
So the big shift for you, so you traditionally you had like cradle to grave sellers that were supported by operations teams. So the person on the account side, they were the main point of contact, but they were also like coordinating and dealing with a lot of the issues and exceptions. And they were also responsible for like booking the freight and making decisions about which carriers were they, is that right?
They had support on a lot of those different levels, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, the buck stops with you. So you
Yeah.
got to get it done. So we were successful at getting a good portion of their work done, and they're supported by set reps down in Colombia that were doing things for them. But you're still all throughout the day. You're every hour you got to meet with them, reprioritize what's going on, relay messages back. Okay, you're doing that. We haven't responded to this email yet. That all that
Right.
back and forth happened. So it could slow someone down, so that when they were like, oh, I want to do 10 sales activities today, well, they're going to cram that 10 into their 8, 9 hour day somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, we need people just that are available to, like, 10 marketing leads have come in, we need to respond to them.
Yeah. And so now the structure is you've got sellers that are responsible for closing new accounts, being the like point person so that the customers still have like a um single point, but then there's like somebody else who is kind of managing the execution of that load. Is that right?
Well, the way we see it is, sales is out there speaking to our brand and our service offerings
Yeah.
and facilitating business back into the BDRs.
Yeah.
So that the BDRs, which are more like that inside sales, customer service,
Okay.
all in one, they'll be there to support them and eventually take on that relationship,
Yeah.
because we want them to really take it and run with it.
Yeah.
They're the experts, and the sales guys, once again, they got to hand off,
Yeah.
move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I mean, it's kind of like in software sales, you often have this, somebody who is out there like winning new business, schedule is free, kind of like running demos, and then once somebody like comes on as a customer, you have like a customer success manager or an account
Yeah.
manager or someone. So it's kind of like a similar model starting to split out. And so your view there is that is the a better balance of the trade-off so that you have sellers that are available, can be responsive, but then you still have that kind of like single point of contact from a execution perspective for the customer.
Yeah, and I think what we found and what I've seen over my 20 years is that those two different roles have two different types of people. There
Right.
is the small percentage of people that are really good at both. But for the most part, you're either super organized and structured
Mm.
and you can execute as a BDR, or you're kind of all over the place and you're just a people person. You know how to get people talking, and you're comfortable in the uncomfortable situations. Like,
Right.
those are different skill sets. So Yes, if you hire 100 people, you might find one that has both of them, but for the most part, those are two different people. And so we're really big on getting, the right people into the company. So who in line with our core values, but
Yeah,
then getting them into the right seats.
right.
And I think what that process has really allowed us to understand is that that is two different seats. So we
Yeah.
should stop trying to crowbar them into one.
So is it like the hunter versus farmer kind of model? Is that how you think, or it's not quite that? Like,
A little bit. I don't like the term farmer because I mean I guess they are growing the business, but we do want people that have that type A personality still in those seats. That they're going to take on that relationship, try to grow it, be incentivized to grow it.
yeah,
But yeah, in the simple terms, it would be
but it's a
farmer.
focusing of roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people do have different skill sets. Um, That's interesting. And where are you guys at in that transition, and any like kind of early signs of like what's kind of working well about that, and what are the challenges with that transition?
So
How do you like architect a shift like that? Because I
yeah,
imagine there's a lot of org change that goes into it.
there's a lot, and so this is where Keith and I differ as leaders, which is it's good that we're partners because we really kind of like you complement each other. So
Yeah.
me, I would have taken the idea, got the framework, part of the way there, and then like let's just start going and let's figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
Because I want to like learn from the mistakes that happen. Whereas Keith is more the architect on the back end, planning, getting everything in place. Like he doesn't want to launch anything until we have every SOP in place, every rule defined, KPIs behind those rules, exactly how we're going to measure them and how all this will flow. So he was working with his management team, really building us all up that we only announced it to the entire floor that I can even talk to you directly about this, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of taking it in now. So over the next 3 months, 4 months, they're just going at whatever pace is needed. Like there's no gun to their head to do it faster. No, I told them let's not wait for the sake of waiting. Like, let's go a little bit. This is where I will push. Go like, trust me, you've done a lot of work. Roll it out.
It
So
sounds like, yeah, good like yin and yang kind of combo. You need a little bit of both, probably.
100%. No, and that's I think his approach was right in this sense, and
Mm.
so it was good we made the transition. That he's in charge of this one. Now results will be everything,
Yeah.
and I think by as we get into Q4, it can be a hard quarter to really judge this thing. So I think the proof will be in the pudding Q1, Q2 of next year. But what's interesting about this is we don't just sell freight brokerage.
Right.
And this is where we were missing the boat, to be honest. Like we have multiple audiences. So yeah, shippers are definitely one of our audiences, but agents are an audience that
Mm.
generates revenue for us.
Mm.
And then owner operators is an audience. And we need drivers to drive all these trucks.
Mm.
So as we looked at it, I said, I want to take this more like the casino host approach, where sales is the casino host. They're talking to a customer that's coming into the casino. They should know and understand all the games that are in the casino.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's up to you as the customer to say, which game do you want to play? Like if you tell me you want to play blackjack, I'm not going to force you onto the poker table or force you into the slots. Like we're just going to take you to where you want to go. And look, as we build a relationship with that customer and the casino host, at some point it's like, hey, I've been interested in this other game. Can you tell
Mm.
me more about it? Oh, let's go over here. Here's some perks. So I think for us, it's like, hey, if they're coming in the door, there's a lot of times shippers don't want to work with brokers or they're not adding new brokers right now. You hear that
Yeah.
all the time. Well, okay, where do we have our assets? Let's talk more about that footprint
Mm.
and who we have in those markets and the work that they're doing and how they could potentially fit. Maybe it's somewhere where we just got to go recruit a new agent in that market to fill that need for that customer. But so it gives sales, one, we got to train them on
Mm.
all these things. So back to your software sales analogy, I'm sure like they don't know how to code this stuff, but like they need to know enough to be able to sell it and then
Yeah.
maybe do a short demo before they hand it off to somebody else. Well, we got to build out that training to train these guys on all the other aspects of the business so that they, no matter what type of leads coming in, they're equipped to, be the casino host for that customer.
Yeah, and so the breadth of the offerings now. So you have the like ARL Logistics, you have the drayage carrier as well. What is the like portfolio look like today, and how have you guys? What are the like areas where it's helpful to kind of have both of them, and how do you sort of how do you view that? Like, what's the role that each of those offerings like plays in the way that you approach the like a customer through their life cycle with you guys?
Well, I think it's based on what the customers need, but ultimately, what we're trying to work back to is how do they each complement each other. So,
Yeah.
the brokerage is more truckload, flatbed, dry van, got some LTL sprinkled in, and the assets is more drayage. And so, where can we take these dry van or flatbed opportunities to
Mm,
potentially recruit an agent over? Or where can we look to see a carrier that we're currently brokering freight to that
mm,
would fit the profile of someone that if they came in under our authority, there's tons of upside and then
mm,
maybe they just don't know it yet. So
mm,
I look at carriers that are 10 to 20 trucks.
mm,
They're on a scheduled vehicle insurance policy. They're factoring their bills. Like they're doing all these things and there's a lot of risk.
mm,
Obviously that's why the factor the bills, giving them a couple points there. And then on the insurance side, it's only getting more difficult.
mm,
And don't get me started on plaintiff attorneys in our country and these billboards and commercials about the big bad trucking companies because it's 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 legal but predatory
yeah.
and it's driving up the cost for a lot of these guys and saying, look, if you can get over the fact that it won't be your company name on the side of the truck,
Mm,
come over here, look at the percentages that you'll give up to come under us. But
yeah.
now you no longer have to bill your customers. You no longer have to float the cash or pay a factoring company. You
Mm,
no longer have to worry about your insurance renewals every year. That
mm,
can be brutal when you got to make that first payment,
mm,
especially if you're on a scheduled vehicle policy. That's all covered under us. If
mm,
one of your guys gets in an accident, you don't have to worry about it shutting down your company. You're
mm,
protected by us. Then on top of that, we have other opportunities to once again bring the brokerage in to try to help them get additional relationships they may not have, or
mm,
maybe it's more unique business that requires drop trailers that they haven't seen before, and we can kind of work them through the network. So they still have to stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to getting business
mm,
and working with their drivers. But we can also help. Hey, what's so great about your business? And we can help you recruit drivers. Now we're
mm,
going to vet them and we're going to make sure you're getting good drivers. And yes, you have to have an ELD and a dash cam in every single truck.
yeah.
So we are going to do that. But that's for all of our best interests, ours, the agent, and the owner operators, that in the event of an accident and you don't have a dash cam,
Yeah.
as your first eyewitness, it's their word versus yours, and the trucking company loses every time.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But when you see some of this footage and these dash cams, it's grotesque what drivers will do. And like the American population needs educated on how to drive around trucks. I know trucks are annoying and we just want to get around and they get in our way, but like understand where their blind spots are, understand what you're doing to risk your family's life by pulling in front of them. Then like if they potentially can't stop. But the unfortunate part is any of these guys get into an accident, it could shut your company down.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, with this new model, like I want to start targeting through marketing that
Mm,
messaging to get out to these guys. They're already in our system. They may already work with us today, and just saying like, here's other ways we could become stickier with our relationship,
mm,
and ultimately help you go from 20 trucks to 50 trucks, 70 trucks. I mean, we have success stories within the network,
mm,
from Shamrock Express or Veteran Carriers, General
mm,
Express. We've got guys in ACT up in New Jersey. We got partners in Chicago. Like
mm,
all these guys came to us and had a vision, and this gave them the ability to just focus on what they do best: working with their drivers, working with their customers. Leave all the other headaches of the trucking company over to us.
So you guys, yeah, you're sort of that platform that can help them like understand how to scale their business and help to reduce risk. And it's interesting, you've already got kind of like channels where you're already working with those folk. Are you guys doing something similar on the brokerage side? Like, do you have an agent model on the brokerage as well?
Yeah, it wasn't by design. I think just through networking, it kind of happened. And then because of the tech stack we built,
Yeah,
it made it very attractive. So at this point here, we still have the company store brokerage in Pittsburgh,
yeah.
but then there are brokerage agents as well.
I'm kind of curious about when you have agents and then your company's stores, are they calling on the same customers in certain situations? Does that happen, and is that like a source of conflict ever?
It's possible. Yeah, and it doesn't happen as much as you would think,
Right.
but it's certainly possible. And it's we go through this all the time. Like, do we make the agent send us every lead that they want to call on, and we vet against that,
Mm,
or do we just cross references and once they actually can you close some business? And majority of the time, it's really the customer is going to dictate what they want to do. So
yeah.
if and a lot of times if could happen the other way. Company store calls and then they say, "Hey, we already work with your." They don't know it's an agent. They say, "We just work with your office in Alabama." I'm like, "Okay, no problem."
Yeah.
How it is. We've had the instances where we're bringing on a new agent and they say, "Okay, here's my book of business. I have 10 accounts." And one of them is an account that's already set up either with company store or another agent, which certainly happens. We have multiple MC numbers, brokerage authority under each one.
Yeah.
So we'll usually just put them under another one and we'll call that the existing agent and say, "Hey, we're bringing this guy on.
Mm.
They know so-and-so at ABC company. You know, you were competing with them before. You just didn't know it. Now you're going to be competing with them still through two ARL MCs, but you neither one sees anything. It's still siloed off. So nothing technically has changed
Yeah.
outside of we can see both sides of it now.
Yeah. Um, Transitioning gears a little bit right now, you've always been very sort of like early in testing out new technologies, and obviously there's like a lot that's sort of changing in freight at the moment with respect to AI and what's possible. But I also know that like at ARL, you guys are very like relationship driven, really on all sides with customers, carriers as well. And I'm curious, like as you sort of think out over the next like 1, 3, 5 years, what are the areas of the business where you think it's going to be really critical to like have people that are very like intimately involved in a process versus like what are the things where you'll just be continuing to like be aggressive in terms of automation, and like what are the areas that sort of excite you and then what are the areas that maybe don't?
Yeah, I think we've always been quick to jump on something to give it a shot, and I know too, with newer companies trying to get off the ground, they need people to beat up the product. So we've always seen that as an opportunity. It's like, we're not going to be in a space where we're developing
Yeah.
the new tech. But we'd rather partner with people that have the resources to do it and then give them the business side of it. Because we've seen it many a times. Like if the tech people would just sit right next to the business people day in and day out, you'll build a product pretty fast, but it's that disconnect is where it slows it down. So we've liked being early adopters
Yeah, I'm
to,
curious about because you have been like awesome partners, I think, to a number of businesses. Like, tell us more about like why that framing, because there's others that like fall on the other side of the fence, right? Who are sort of happy to let everyone else go through that process as well. Like, what are
yeah.
the advantages or what are the attractions to it for you?
Well, I think earlier in this, when we were building up our side of the company, it was we did treat it like a startup, and we were watching our own P&L, and it was
Mm.
like, okay, well, we can't go out and buy the best, most expensive things, and
Mm.
and at the same time, the industry was changing, and there was a lot of new tech coming, and that was interesting, and that to point is just getting to know those people, and first you're connecting with the person to see if they get it. And if
Mm.
they understand what they're trying to do. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, how could this be integrated into what we're doing here? Once those boxes are checked and it's like, okay, that is a problem we're trying to solve, we can help you. And my speech I've ever given to everybody, I probably gave it to you back in the day, is like, look, we're going to help you with, but not just for ARL. We're not going to give you our niche type needs. We're going
Mm.
to look at the 80/20 rule here. And the things that we're going to give you are going to help you build this product that's going to help you get other customers. And
Mm.
we want our vendors to be successful. Because we're going to be building around this in our tech
Mm.
stack. So we kind of need them to be successful.
Yeah.
So if we build around it and they collapse, like that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But at the same point, I was saying, like, but remember who helped you. Like we're
Right.
helping. We're kind of working for our food here,
Yeah.
and I think everyone's been usually pretty good about that as we build up along the way. And look, I've had some of those that didn't pan out. We did 2 year, 3 years, just didn't fit with where we were. It seemed like it was a good thing then, and
Mm.
just nothing at this point. It's no harm, no foul. You just move on at that point, as long as everyone's being honest with each other. So, I don't know, we've seen a lot of success from them. We've seen a lot of our vendors, honestly, become very successful along the way too, which is, I think that's the cool part of it. We've seen some of these guys do that, sell that, and they've already moved on to something else.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, and it's cool how you've figured out an approach that, I mean, I think, partners that work with you are very appreciative of it because, I mean, it is worth its weight in gold having folks that are there to provide feedback and are willing to like tolerate something that maybe is not fully baked. But that you've also figured out a way to like play that to your advantage as well, right? As a, business on the smaller side without developers, like how do you actually get access to stuff that serves you, but also serves the industry?
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's like a really good it's refreshing to like have that framing of like you being willing to invest to the like benefit of the industry. Because I know you've done this for a number of different folk.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, and then the key to it too is you got to get your people on board.
Yeah.
You know, it was at some point I had to hand it off to some others and I had to embed into them, like, this is how we do it. This is how we work with a new vendor. Because now, like, as you would know, I mean, I'm not involved in any of that stuff anymore and you have to work with our guys. So, to be honest, you're probably useless to get feedback from me at this point. So, but getting those guys on board and selling it to them, and they got to see it like, oh, like I got to tell the stories of how we got to this point where somebody said like, so here's the origin of it now, and this is how it starts, and this is where it can come. And I think they got excited that like they get to see the finished product too, and they take a little pride in it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, where do you I mean, the industry's like changed and evolved a lot, you know, even in the like time that you've been in it. I'm curious, like, where do you see things headed? Like, what do you think the sort of pairing of like human plus like machine looks like over the next few years? And what's your kind of like mental model for thinking about integrating some of the like newer technologies over the next few years?
So I'm looking at it now the same way we looked at it 10 years ago when we started with lean. And it was the same thing. It was like, what is that mundane task that could be that we sent to Colombia? We sent to Colombia first and we figured out how to automate. And now it's like, okay, a lot of that work, it's mundane for them. And like they're super talented too.
Yeah.
They don't need to be doing that. So now we're starting to look at what is it where you're taking data from one system and putting it into another system and you're just doing that over and over again and trying to figure out ways to automate that. You know, whether it is through APIs or we're going to do some RPA, whatever it might be. And I think what's interesting, like the past 3 months, we've been really laying the groundwork for that of like looking at the entire company and trying to figure out where is that low hanging fruit? Where is there some proof of concepts that we can go in and where we won't really break something and screw it up? Because at the end of the day, we have to deliver a product to all of our customers and our agents. So they're not going to care that we're testing something new and we screwed it up and we need 2 weeks to fix it. Like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think we've identified some really just low hanging fruit, of mundane tasks that we can start attacking those then. And I'm within the next month or two, we'll have some proof of concepts out there and then start building off of it. So the same thing is like, first things first, I put down in Colombia was just billing and auditing logs. The most boring work you've ever seen. And then it was like, oh, okay, we figured that out. Okay, let's add something else to it. You know, and start building on top of it. So you're going to see a lot of these roles that are augmented by AI and, you know, having the human that has to manage it and manage the quality of it. I think that question actually I would throw back to you. My biggest fear is that I'm 5 years down the line. We've done a great job with this. Something breaks. And my goodness, maybe it's something I have running overnight as well, and it breaks and we don't realize it and we just cause a mess. And now we're not staffed with the humans to go fix it fast enough. That's my biggest fear right now.
Yeah, it is it's an interesting challenge. Like, I mean, it becomes really important. Like, reliability is so critical because, like, if your systems are like improving your productivity by like a small amount of percent, there's probably some like slack somewhere where you can cover it. But when things become like mission critical and you just don't physically have enough like human resources because you've built the org around it, then that becomes like yeah. So how do you think about that, like managing that risk?
I think we'll have to have some level of redundancy within the processes, you know, and it's just going to be what comfort level do you have with it. And I think little by little we'll build onto it, but there has to be, I guess, slack is kind of what you can use there within it that we can move around. And as we're learning more, you know, I've heard of some that are using like even like AI supervisors to watch what the bots are doing, and it's catching things for you. So, you know, I just don't understand enough about it yet, you know, but what I'm trying to look at is where can we, once again, like if it's a 10-step process and we can automate parts of it, I'm good with that. You know, so if there's an auditing function to it that kicks back exceptions, and now instead of touching 100% of the loads, we only have to touch 20% of the loads. Like that's a huge win. Even if it was half of them, that's a huge win. And so I think that's where we're going to like just start chipping away at this thing. and just take it in chunks. Our motto is small wins every day.
Yeah.
And because you start building those up over time, it doesn't feel like you made a lot of change. And you look back after a year or two and you're like, holy hell, like, look what we did.
Where did
Um,
that value come from? I've seen you talk a lot about that.
I think it's just never settling for status quo.
Mm,
Always trying to better yourself. It's been always just ingrained in me. You always feel like I could have done something better.
mm,
But at the same time, you take big swings, it's big risks. And when you're in charge of this many people, it's very irresponsible to do
mm,
that. But I'm also not going to sit back and just let things stay the same. So there's just those small wins that we're looking to get, and you add up onto them. And I think we've seen it in our careers. If you're patient
mm.
and you stick in this long enough, it'll work, and, um, patience isn't always my strong suit, but I'll remind myself even sometimes, yeah, it's small wins.
The framework for like one of the things that I see folks not struggle with, but like think about is when you look at the way that freighters move, like there is a lot of opportunity to improve things. So like having some sort of like mental model and framework for thinking about, okay, like where to start. It sounds like you guys have kind of gone through a version of that exercise. How do you approach the like preparation and the choosing like where to attack? Like what is your framework for thinking through that?
To be honest, it's just going back to just shadowing, like,
Mm,
just show me. Like, as we started to understand some of the processes and hearing some of the issues, so we have a process where we run on traction. It's an entrepreneur operating system.
oh yeah.
And through that, it brings issues at every level of the company up throughout these level 10 meetings every day. So Monday through Friday, different levels of the org, these meetings are going on. And so through all those issues, it comes back to it's either a process issue or a
Mm,
people issue. And if we have the right people and they're in the right seats, then it's probably a process issue. And then you get into the process and you start seeing some of these things. You're like, whoa, I didn't know that's what we were doing,
mm,
And I think as we've been poking at it is like just seeing how this people are doing their job every day. And
mm,
now we're going out on the road trip to see our agents, and we'll just go and sit down and say, show me what you do from start to finish for the
mm,
life cycle of a shipment all the way through.
mm,
And so you're starting from quoting to delivery,
mm,
and then the billing side of it, but then also there's driver qualifications, all these things that come into play.
mm,
Listening to the process and then saying, why do we do that?
mm,
No, like, I don't know. It's just how we've been doing it. And like, it's funny because like, I remember being in college and like, it's like textbook 101 management. And like, you know, why do we do that? Well, it's just the way we've always done it. And like, and you
mm.
still to this day, I will hear that. I'm like, guys, why? Like, well,
Yeah.
maybe we shouldn't. And what if we didn't? And that would save you some time. And I think especially with our agents, they're really operations and that's your front office. And we act more as the back office.
Right.
And I'll see these things where they're being inefficient front office and we're being inefficient in the back office. And it was like,
Mm,
guys, if we just cut this out or did this training to improve the quality of it, and reset or had this one enhancement, like it would save us all a bunch of time and get everyone to buy into that.
mm,
And then it's like, okay, now we move forward with the change. I think
mm,
sometimes we see an issue, we already have the solution and we just want to sell it.
mm.
And it's like, no, no, no. Sit there with the users, let them tell you what the issues are, and just ask why. Why are we doing that?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and how often? Yeah, because there's this. I don't know. Like Elon Musk talks about is like I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but his like framework for how he got his factories to operate more efficiently. And there was sort of like step one is like understand the process, but then like delete everything that like doesn't need to be there before you start kind of automating it. And it's sort of like seems like there's like flavors of that and how you think about it. What about the like size of the impact? Like, are you looking primarily like how do you sort of think about what to go at? Like you've identified pain points. There's probably a bunch. Like, how do you think about what to start with?
Yeah, and I think we're having a lot of those conversations right now. Actually, this is one of
Yeah.
the things I'm thinking of an email I was sending this morning because I'm like, I want to look at like an ROI tracker, on these enhancements that we're putting in place. And I think we'll make assumptions in the beginning of, okay, this is the amount of time it's going to save us.
Hmm.
And then from there, okay, once it's rolled out, what are those estimated savings that we can't really calculate? But at some point we need to have some true cost savings, whether it eliminated a technology that we don't need anymore. If it took two people to do that job and now it's one, or just there's an efficiency gain, and now someone can do 30 times or 30% more than what they were doing before. So as we grow, we don't have to add those people, and we can track that cost. But I think that's still a work in progress. So it's still there's a little bit of gut feel in there, but I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if it's only going to be a small change to get a decent win, we're going to take those all day long.
Hmm.
If it's going to be a seismic shift and like it's going to be hard to measure that, it's not necessarily a no, but let's just table that for
Mm.
right now because there's so much change going on within the organization. Like we have this conversation all the time. It's like, when is it just too much change?
Right.
And I think I have to remind people, I was like, well, some of these things aren't that big. Yes, it's a lot of change, but they're not that big. We can do a lot of those because we have a lot of talented people. And yes, we see and feel them all at the executive level, but within their departments, they have their own. Like they don't know about the ones the other departments are doing. So like, let's just let them execute.
Yeah.
Um, but there's some that go cross department, tend to be the ones that are more of the seismic shift that we have to be very strategic of saying like, we can only do so many of those.
Mm.
So choose wisely.
Is there anything that you think, anything that like surfaces as like potentially a big unlock, but would be hard to execute against that like sort of stands out in that challenging, but maybe like a big opportunity?
Well, there's one we're always sitting on. And so we're part of US1 Industries, like I mentioned. They do have a proprietary TMS system.
Mm.
We're in the process of it's TM3 version 3. We're moving into TM4. That alone has been a big challenge. But then I sit there and think about all the data that is in the system that US1 has,
Mm.
but it's dirty. It's just dirty. It come in so many different ways with so many different processes, too
Mm.
many free-form fields. There are agents across all these networks that are putting this information in. They all do it differently. It's
Mm.
like, man, if we could clean up that data,
Mm.
what we would be sitting on, especially from a drayage perspective, like no one
Right.
has a drayage pricing tool out there. And
Mm.
like we have a lot of it. But I think as we look to build TM4, one of the things I keep telling them is like, we also have to retrain all the users and we have to standardize how things get into the system
Mm.
because it starts there. If it's coming in different ways, there's no way we're going to clean it up on the back end. So we got to get a lot of features to make them see the value in moving the TM4, but
Mm.
at the same time, like standardize the process to what we feel is the most efficient way to do the job.
Mm.
And look, as people challenge it, if they're right, then change it, change the process. If it's an
Mm.
exception, don't. And then
Mm.
now we're sticking to this. But at the end of the day, we clean up that data, we're going to be sitting on a lot of drayage information that could be used internally or
Mm.
potentially monetized. So, that one I think is a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Is all the things going on, but at least internally, we'd love to leverage it a little bit better. So it's something we'll be working on over the
Yeah,
next
that's an
3 to 5
interesting one.
years.
I do wonder if there's not like one of the things that's interesting with AI now. Obviously, it's very good at dealing with unstructured data and turning it into like structured data. And I wonder if you could almost put an agent that just goes and reviews every like shipment in that database and pulls out the like things that you want, even if they're in free form fields and etc. Or maybe just a bunch of it's missing, in which case it's going to be very, very challenging. But there might be something that you could
Yeah,
do
it's going
there.
to pull up a lot of exceptions. As we're like, if you can get it down to a small amount of exceptions to manage to it,
Yeah.
but eventually, I think it would just feed into our training, and that's really what I want to get better at is continuous training. Like we do really good on the front end with training.
Yeah.
It's that continuous training, and even if it's stuff that they should already know, but like even at our agent level, like they have turnover with their staff, and
Mm.
then they hire someone new. They train that person on how they perceive they were trained or how they've adapted to this, and that it's just different variations. Like we have to standardize the training, and then I think maybe to your point, if the AI was kicking out some of these exceptions that would trigger where we should do the next continuous training to get the best bang for our buck,
Interesting.
to get us closer to that 80-20 rule, because I don't
Yeah.
think we'll just ever get it back to 100.
Well, and you might be able to have, yeah, like, an AI trainer that like coaches people periodically as well, potentially.
Well, you would love to have that as they're going through the system and a
Yeah.
little pop up saying like, "Hey, did you know you could do this?" Or
Right.
like, "This should be here." And hey, don't forget that's a required field, type thing.
That's interesting. Jordan, as we like wrap up here, I'm curious, like, what do you, as you look out over the next 12 months, what are the things that you're kind of like looking out for? I mean, it's obviously been like a bit of a tough tough few years here, and from like a market perspective, and what are the things that like get you excited about the next 12 months?
Well, I think first off, on the cautious side, I mean, we're still worried about receivables. We have been for a while, but I
Mhm.
think the longer this goes on, the longer this uncertainty goes on, we're seeing it play out. We're in good standing, but it's just because we're cautiously taking the approach to the next 6 months or a year. But like, who's not going to be able to survive some of these things much longer?
Mm.
So we're going to keep an eye on that because there's a lot of intermediaries that are our customers because we do a
On the
lot of
drayage
drayage work,
side,
and so like, yeah,
yeah.
just making sure everyone's in good shape. Um,
Mm.
but I think, look, there's obviously tariffs is the big buzzword right now. It's impacting a lot of different things. I'm hopeful that this is just the shakeup to get it to where we'll be in a better spot for domestic freight,
Have you
moving
seen
more
an
often.
impact on your business?
Um, it's hard to really say it's a direct impact because it's things are just moving. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, like July wasn't a great month for us, but I'm talking to a lot of my peers in different modes, and July wasn't a great month for a lot of people.
Right.
But prior to that, we were actually doing okay, and I think it's just really hard to tell. And everyone's just sitting back, trying to figure out what's happening next. But eventually, you just have to, run your business and do what
Mm.
you do. So things are going to start moving. It'd be interesting to see if was, we always look at things through a different lens on the container side. Like when I got to ARL 10 years ago,
Mm.
we more of our revenue came from domestic containers, so 53-foot containers that were going
Mm.
on the rail that was replacing over the road work, which competes directly with over the road trucking.
Mm.
And less of our revenue came from international. Well, as things shifted during COVID, a lot went to the international boxes at the ports.
Mm.
And at the same time, once the skyrocketing prices on truckload came down, well, now all of a sudden, intermodal pricing was pretty similar to over the road, and
Mm.
so a lot of that freight went back to over the road because they can get it there faster.
Interesting.
Um, and so we've shifted. And I'm just wondering now with all this push for manufacturing domestically, like, is we're going to see that shift again
Mm.
to that we'll start picking up more 53-foot work? I don't know, but we're just going to try to make sure we're agile enough to move to wherever the market's going.
I love it. Jordan, it's been awesome getting to chat and hear more about your story and perspective on things. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome.